For today's online lesson, we're going to focus on the use of visual aids within your speech or when you're giving your speech. Some of you may be wondering, how am I going to produce a visual aid, or do I need a visual aid? And I hope that this video will clear things up for you quite a bit. I'm also going to give you some tips on if you do decide to use visual aids with your speech, what you need to do to make sure that these are effective and that you are not using them to the detriment of your speech, so making your speech worse by the use of visual aids, which can sometimes happen. So the first thing that I wanted to say to you guys is that you do not need visual aids to present an excellent speech. Many of the best speeches in the world are given without any visual aids, so it's certainly not necessary. But if you do want to use a visual aid, maybe there's something very specific, a particular image, possibly even a particular short clip that you would like to supplement your speech content with, then absolutely you can do that. So I've just got some tips for you to follow when you're putting together visual aids for your speech, because really in the end, the only reason that you use a visual aid for your speech is to make your speech better, to enhance your speech, if that is something that you feel is necessary. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is text. If you are creating a slideshow or perhaps even just one image to show on the screen as you give your speech, please remember that no text is ever needed. You may have had experiences in the past where you've done a slideshow and you've put text up on the screen. As you get into sort of tertiary education, higher secondary tertiary education, you really need to recognize that you need to rely on your own knowledge of a subject rather than the knowledge that is presented on a slideshow or on an image. So really the most effective visual aids are purely visual. It can be very distracting for an audience to see a lot of text, a chunk of text behind the speaker, because they're torn between reading the text and listening to the speaker. So that's just something I wanted to highlight for you guys, that if you do use visual aids with your speech, then I would really recommend not using any text or a simple phrase or a simple word that's relevant to what you're talking about would be appropriate. Okay, so next important piece of information is that timing really matters. If you are using visual aids, then you need to make sure that they work with your speech. So they run alongside your speech in a manner that makes sense, that matches the content of your speech and what you are saying. Now, how do you make sure that your timing is correct? The only answer to that question is to practice. So if you have visual aids, then it is more important than ever that you actually give yourself time to practice your speech with the visual aids in the background. And you need to make sure that you're confident enough that you're not standing behind your computer sort of just pressing buttons and focusing too much on that and getting it wrong and clicking things too fast or too slow. That's not obviously going to engage your audience. So it would be better if you haven't allowed yourself enough time to practice with a visual aid, then honestly it would be better that you do not use one, because it's so distracting watching someone fiddle around with technology rather than sort of fluidly and confidently going through the speech, having the visual aids seamlessly run through as they present their speech. So I think that's really important. Timing matters. Now, our next thing is that slides should not be distracting. I apologize because my video program won't allow the GIF to actually go, but it's sort of like a strobe light GIF that says, "Look at me," and it's got epilepsy inducing sound and visuals in the background of it. But yeah, so basically slides should not be distracting. If your audience is paying more attention to the visual aids than to what you're saying, then the visual aids are doing nothing to help your speech. This is why lots of text is really distracting for audiences. This is why lots of text is not a good thing. But also images that need a lot of deciphering. So if an image is not clear, if it's not really obvious why you've included an image in your visual aids for your speech, then audiences are probably going to be trying to figure out why it's there or why it's included rather than listening to the content of your speech. So slides should not take up the audience's attention. Their attention should be really just on what you're saying. And lastly, never read aloud from a slide. So this does kind of come under the same umbrella as don't have text on your slide or don't have too much text on your slide. I usually say as a blanket rule, don't have any text on a slide, because then you've got really no option. You can't read off the slide. A lot of students do put text on slides because they like to know that they've got some kind of safety net behind them in case they forget something and they need to turn around and look. So if you had a key word, if you had a key phrase, that would be okay, that was on the slide. But you certainly don't want to have what really amounts to cue cards. If you can see in this picture here, there's far too much text on that screen, and this man is clearly just reading off the screen, which doesn't really engage the audience. So yeah, as a general rule, never read aloud from a slide. So just a couple of things to remember. Cue cards and visual aids are designed to support you. They are aids. So they're not designed for you to rely on. If you are relying on your cue cards, if you are relying on your visual aids to help you understand your topic or to help you express your opinion on a topic, then you are using them wrong, and this will result in lower grades on your SAC. It is very obvious when someone is leaning on their cue card or leaning on their visual aids too much. So it's really important for you not to do that. Keep in mind as well that technology can sometimes fail. So you need to ask yourself, could you still do your speech without the visual aids that you had prepared? It's really important that you are able to do that. If you are confident in your topic, if you've practiced, if you know what your opinion is, if you know what your arguments are, then you shouldn't have any issue completing your speech or giving your speech without technology that was planned previously. Of course, you might be a little bit more nervous, but you shouldn't have any issue with doing that because you know your topic, and that's the most important thing. And again, it's really obvious when someone knows their topic and when someone is sort of flying by the seat of their pants. So another tip, visual aids are an extra, they are not the focus of your presentation. So this really reiterates what I was saying before, is that your visual aids should not be the main front and center of your presentation. Your audience should not be looking at the slides or your visual aids too much. Certainly for the moment that you're using it, yes, that's brought to their attention, but it should be used to supplement what you're saying. And just sort of what I said before, really the audience should be paying more attention to what you're saying than what you're showing them. And lastly, your body language, where you stand and how you speak have more of an impact on an audience than any slideshow. So using visual aids is definitely not mandatory. It's not something you have to do. It's not going to necessarily make your presentation better. So if you think to yourself, oh, I'm going to use visual aids just because it'll make my presentation better, I'll definitely get better marks. Don't think that, because actually sometimes it can result in worse marks if a student uses a visual aid in an incorrect manner. So if they don't follow the tips that I've given in this particular slideshow here, or this particular video, then you are in danger of perhaps losing marks if you do things like put too much text on the screen, if you confuse your audience by using irrelevant images in your visual aids, if your timing is not correct, or if you read off your slides, then that can actually damage your chances of getting good grades. So yes, a visual aid can be a real help, but it can also be a hindrance. So I hope that this has been of assistance to you to think about what you would like to do and what visual aids you might like to use, or if you would not like to use any visual aids at all. Hope it's been helpful. Thanks, guys.